Okay, good morning. So we're up to Siman Shin Hey, up to Yud Dalet. So we're talking about Balmeh Behema Yotzah, what an animal can go out with on Shabbos. And today we're going to be talking about different things, but included in today's Seifim about taking a dog for a walk on Shabbos. So let's see. It says Yud Dalet, Lo Seitze Shum Behema Lo Okud V'Lo Ragel. You're not allowed to take an animal out on Shabbos le okud v'le ragel. What does that mean? Pirish okud. Okud means shekoishe yoda achas im raglo. The front leg of the animal is tied to the back leg. V'ragel, and when it says you can't take it out le okud v'le ragel, ragel means shekoishe achas miragleha klape malo. That one leg is sort of bent at the knee and is tied up. Sheloi teilech ele al shalosh ragloim. That is really only walking on three legs. And the Batnur on the Mishnah there in Shabbos explains that it's in order for the animal shouldn't run away. So it's like a sort of a shmir, as it were. Says the Mishnah Bura in Mem Ches, Yoda Achas. The Mikol Zeh Yesh Sar Godel Behema. When you do this to the animal, and you tie the front leg to the back leg, or you tie one leg at the knee, and therefore it's considered like a burden for the animal, and therefore there's no reason to, and therefore the animal can't go out in this with this sort of restraint on Shabbos. The concern is a bit different in terms of Hilchos Shabbos, namely that the rope which you're using to tie the animal, the front leg to the back leg, or to tie the knee, it might fall off and then you might come to carry it. But dafka yoda achas, and it's dafka one leg, but if you're tying two legs together, that the animal won't run away. In other words, not that it won't be stolen, but it won't run away like you do with susim kasheroin when you're farming. Mutalot zeisbo, and the animal can go out with that on Shabbos. Then so that's considered just regular protection, and that's not considered a masu, and therefore that would be okay. V'chanal b'reish hasiman. Okay, weiter. Tesvov lo yikshar gemalim ze achazeh. You're not allowed to tie camels one sort of behind the other. V'hu toifes ba'afsor harishon, and you're holding on to the leash at the beginning. V'kulam nimshachim al yodei, and you're sort of pulling along the whole convoy of camels. Avalim toifes kama afsori gemolim biyodei muta. But if you're holding lots of leashes in one hand, and you're leading lots of camels in one go, that would actually be okay. And there are those who forbid even that. And they only allow if you're leading one animal and you're being moshechit bechevel. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Tesvov, Mem Sifkat Mem Tes, Lo Yikshar, Mishum Demechsi Commander Ozel Lemachram Lashuk. Because if you've got this whole convoy of camels, it looks like you're walking the animal to a marketplace. And therefore you're involved in business on Shabbos. And even if therefore the animals were tied up in this way, even from Erev Shabbos, it would be also to lead them in this way. And the other opinion, which says it's even one animal is also, even if you're holding lots of leashes in one go, then that reason perhaps looks like going to the marketplace. This second opinion is a das yochid, and all the poskim argue with it, and therefore you don't have to worry about it. Okay, Tes Zayin, hamoitzi behema, someone who leads an animal, now this is referring to walking our dogs. This is the most contemporary and relevant, if you like, application of this halacha.
It says behema the whole time.
Yeah.
Does that imply?
Well, we'll see. Well, yeah. Well, not really. We'll see, because it's referring to a behema, but you'll see it applies to the dog. That's in contemporary times. That would be the most application. Most people will have a pet dog as opposed to a pet sheep or goat or something else. Okay, so if you're leading or walking an animal with a leash, you got to be careful. So again, if you're walking where there's an Erev on Shabbos, then no problem. That's not the issue. The issue over here is hoitzah, is carrying. So says the Mechaber, you got to be careful of two things. You're leading the animal with a leash. Tzarich lizoher, you got to be careful. Shelo yetze rosh hachevel mitachas yodo tefach lemato. That when you're holding the leash, imagine you've got the leash and it's connected to the animal. The other end of the leash shouldn't come away from your hand for more than a tefach. The rope shouldn't hang down from the other side of your hand for more than a tefach. Why? The domi b'misha noisa b'yodoi v'lo mischazia b'afsa behema. Because it looks like you're carrying the leash rather than walking the animal. The gam, and second thing to be worried about, to be careful about, lo yaniach ha b'menachevel ben yodoi labehema. You shouldn't let the leash be very sort of loose and therefore droop down. That it's sort of almost like getting close to the ground. It's sort of almost draping on the ground. It's getting within a tefach of the ground. And if it's very long and therefore you want the animal to be near you and you've got this problem, what do you do? You just wrap the excess rope or excess leash around the neck of the animal. Okay, so that Tes Zayin really is the halachas of walking a dog on Shabbos. Two things to bear in mind. Again, we're worried about Hotzah. I remember as a kid, the first time, literally, you never saw dogs on Shabbos. You never saw it. And I remember the first time seeing a man walk a dog on Shabbos. Again, this was years ago, when it was before any Eruv here in London. And it looked so bizarre. It looked very strange that you saw a fellow walk a dog on Shabbos, but the halacha is you're allowed to. But you've got to be careful of these two things. Number one, when you're holding the leash, and let's say the dog is over there and you've got the leash like that, the other end of the leash shouldn't droop down more than a tefach, because then it looks like you're carrying the leash. And number two, when you're holding the leash, it should be a bit taut and not sort of slack and just sort of droop down, because again, it looks like you're carrying the leash. All right, so let's do the Mishnah Berurah on that. Tes Zayin. Yeah, okay, but Chazal, we know about Mechsa. Says the Mishnah Berurah Nun, Tefach Lamato, that it shouldn't hang down from the other side of your hand, Tefach. If it's exactly a Tefach coming out, you haven't done an Issa. If it's two Tefachim, then that's when you've actually called, that's a problem. But lechatchila you should try and avoid, even though me'ikad din, the problem is when it's two tefachim, but lechatchila you should try and avoid it even sort of hanging out by a tefach. Miyode from your hand. Okay, that was number one. And then number two, that it shouldn't droop down. Ad sheyagia, it says the Mishnah Berurah Nun Aleph, ad sheyagia, until it comes within a tefach of the ground. V'atam, and the reason is the sheyagia somach la'aretz, when the leash sort of droops down and is sort of almost like dragging on the ground. Lo tei nira ki'ilo ha'behema nimsheches bo. It doesn't appear that you're using the leash to walk the animal. Ti'emuta machmas shehu netirusa behema. Then it looks like it's netirusa behema. It's the behema. It looks like it's for the protection. It's not for the protection of the animal. Ela kamasu ba'alma. It's like you're just carrying something, and therefore that would not be allowed. If you look at 19, this is very interesting. What about a blind dog, a guide dog? Yeah, I think we call it nowadays a seeing dog. It's sometimes called. So what about a blind person who taking out a guide dog on Shabbos? So very interesting, in footnote number 19, he says, V'leinian summa, a blind person, ha'olech and kelev nichya, who takes a guide dog, the sharsheres kashur letzava ha'kelev, and there is a leash around the collar of the dog. Das ha'gorim Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, in Shmir Shabbos, she'itochin she'osel elot seisim ha'kelev b'Shabbos, l'shus rabim. A blind person should not go out into Shus Rabim with this guide dog, mishum shvisas behemdoi, because it violates the problem of shvisas behemdoi. V'hoisif she'ein lahavi raya she'mutar lasos kein mima she'kozva Shulchan Aruch kan she'mutar lasosim afsa ha'kosher behema. We said over here in the Shulchan Aruch that you're allowed to go out with a leash, so why should the blind person be any different? So he answers, Kivin sha'afsa bo lishmar al behema. Because the leash is really protecting the animal. You are therefore in control of the animal, and you're looking after it. That's the heta. But the guide dog is serving the person. It's not the other. You're not looking after the dog. And therefore, with a blind person, the leash is not to look after the kelev, but the kelev is looking after you. And therefore, the het is gone. So to take the blind person, take a guide dog in Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman says in Shmir Shabbos should not do it. Okay, Yud Zayin. Again, if there's an Eruv, then you're okay. Says the Mechaber in Yud Zayin, Ein Chamor Yotze B'mar Da'as. Now we'll do this Mechaber interspersed with Mishnah Berurah because there's lots of details here. And Lamaisa, it's a long Mishnah, and there's in the Perek and Shabbos Bameh Behema Yotzah. Says the Mechaber Yud Zayin, Ein Chamor Yotze B'mar Da'as. A Chamor does not go out with a saddlecloth Bizman She'ena Kshur L'Erev Shabbos, and the time when it wasn't properly attached on Erev Shabbos, v'loy bezug, and nor should it go out with a zug, which is a bell, afal pishu pakuk, even though the clapper is the ringer is stopped up, v'loy besulam shebetzavoroy, nor should it go out with a sulam shebetzavoroy, with literally a ladder on its neck. Now, what does that mean? V'hin luchos, those are like boards, shekoshrim soviv tzavoroy, which you tie around the neck of the animal, shelo yechachech makosei, that it shouldn't sort of itch its wound. So it's like a boards around the neck of the animal that it shouldn't turn its neck and scratch and worsen a wound that it has. Nor should it go out with a strap on its foot. It's like a ring, a thick ring. An animal who's got small steps, and it sometimes knocks its feet together. And you put on this ring to protect the animal, that it shouldn't knock its legs against each other. Okay, let's just do the Mishnah Berurah till there. Sif Kotten Nun Beis Ein Chamor V'lo Bezug. Now Kvar Muva Le'el B'Sif Aleph U'B'Soif Sif Yud Aleph. For the careful reader, he will note that we've already discussed all of this in Sif Aleph and Soif Sif Yud Aleph. V'Shonim Mishum Inach, but it's brought again here really because of the cases that follow. The Mishnah Hakol b'Mishnah Achas b'Gemara, that is brought in one long Mishnah there in Shabbos. V'lo b'Sulam Nun Gimel, that the animal shouldn't go out with this sulam, with this ladder type of material. What is the reason? Tam kol elu. The reason, this was the thing that you put around the neck of the animal, that it shouldn't itch a wound and worsen a wound. Tam kol elu levad me'elu sheneva beheja b'tamam. The reason for all of these things that we're going to mention in this sif, aside from the specific reasons that will be given, mishum techayis alahu, that you might have rachmanos on the animal, v'inofel osel asuye, and you might take it off, and if it falls down, you'll just carry it and you won't put it back on the animal, because you know if you've got a good itch, you want to itch it, so you have rachmanos on the animal. I think that's what it means, and therefore you might come to carry if it falls off. Nun dalet v'hu min tabas, and so too you shouldn't go out with the animal if it's got a ring around its legs to prevent the legs from knocking into each other. Says that was the reason the Mechaber gave. And says the Mishnah Berurah in Nun Dalet, Zeu Pirush Rashi. That really is the way Rashi understands it. Uberif Pirush Oid, Shekashanivka Parso al Shel Regal Behema, Kaishrin Oisa Berutzua Kadesh Techalim V'Tachsa L'Kumshahoisa. I think this is what it means, that it's if it gets some sort of injury, then it will be able to heal properly, so that the legs don't knock against each other, and it will continue to rub and to aggravate the wound. Okay, back to the Mechaber. Ve'ein, you need two fingers here, one on the Mishnah Berurah, one on the Mechaber. Ve'ein hatar negolim yotzim bechutim. Tarnagolim, chickens shouldn't go out with these sort of strands, shekoshim beragleim l'siman, that you tie a little pieces of string or something that you put around the leg of the chicken, l'siman, as a sign that it's yours. This is your animal or something, or to identify the animal or whatever it is. Nor should you put the chicken go out with a ritzua around its legs, which is to prevent it from causing damage to kalim. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Nun Hey, Kadesh Yishbra. What does that mean? If, however, you tie the string around the leg of the chicken so that the chicken won't escape, Shari Lot says boy, and that's okay for the animal to go out with. Anything you do as a shmira, as security, to protect the animal, Havelok Kamoy Malbush, that's got a din of a Malbush, and therefore that would be okay. Alright, back to the Mechaber. Ve'ein ha'elim yotzim ba'agolo shetachas el yosehem. Now, nor so too a ram shouldn't go out with a little carriage under the tail of the animal. I don't know if you ever learned, if you've learned Mishnah Shabbos with that picture book, it's got pictures of this. Imagine the animal, the goat or the whatever this is, a ram, is going out and its tail is being supported by a little carriage like a little buggy, a little thing at the back of the animal, and it's going. Now, why are you doing that? She'osim lohem kain. They do this kadei shelo teha ha'alya nigreres ba'aretz. So the alya, the tail of the animal, won't be dragging on the ground, and it will get damaged. Okay, continues the Mechaber. Ve'ein ha'izim yotzim be'etz yodua. And so too, goats, izim, shouldn't go out with eitz yodua shenoisim bechotmeim. It's a certain piece of wood they put on their nose, k'dei she'is atshu, that it will cause the animal to sneeze. Why do you want your animal to sneeze? Ve'yiplu toiloim shibur, when it sort of moves its head very, very sharply, very abruptly, then all the toiloim, all the worms that in Sheba Hashem in the head of the animal will fall out. So therefore you encourage the animal to sneeze to get rid of the bugs and the worms in its head. Nor should you go out, your calf should go out with a little awl, with like a yoke, which you put around its neck. Which is basically the Mishnah there says in Shabbos that you're training the animal when it's older to carry a yoke, so you have a little yoke on the egel to sort of train it in. Nor with a sort of a muzzle or something you put on its nose, some sort of protection in some form that it shouldn't they shouldn't suckle from the animal. Okay, let's just do the Mishnah Berurah till there. Nun vov lo bizmom. So this is going on this last bit. But bia hagra mashma de bezeh hatamud. For the reason for this one is to have a k'may masui. Therefore, this thing is like a masui. The domi lachsoim shebepipar is like a muzzle on the mouth of a parah. Shebesifid aleph to shamatam mishum masui. And the reason is it's considered a masui. Okay, back to the Mechaber. I'm 3 lines from the bottom. V'lo para ba'or, nor should a cow go out ba'or with some leather shenostin al dadeha, which is there on the teats of the para. Shelo yinkuha hashrotzim, the shrotzim, the shrotzim, the bugs and the creepy crawlies shouldn't suckle from this para. V'lo b'ritzua sheben karnea, nor should the para go out with a ritzua, with some sort of strand, a strip, some cloth between its horns. Bein imhi l'shim or bein imhi l'noi, whether it's for protective purposes or for decorative purposes. Says the Mishnah Berurah Nun Zayin, bein hi l'shimur to have a netirus yaseira lepara, have a masui, because this is excess protection, and therefore it's considered a masui, like we said in Sif Aleph. Okay, vayt in the Mechaber. V'loi teitze, bottom line, v'loi teitze para b'chevel shebetzavara, a shar b'chevel shebetzavara. A cow or a shar, an ox, shouldn't go out with a rope around its neck, lefi she'ein tzricha shmira, because it doesn't need shmira. Says the Mishnah Berurah Nun Ches, v'havik masu, and therefore this rope will be like a masui, like a burden. V'im tova livreach, and if its nature, if the animal's nature is to run away, nisbar b'siftala demuta, because that's normal for this animal. Continuing the Mechaber, aval golim, but calves mutarim, that would be okay. Lefi she'ein meridim bekal, because they easily rebel. Says the Mishnah Berurah Nun Tes, afilu hachevel karuch soviv tzavar, even if the rope is around their neck, to yuchel letofsam b'hachevel, still that would be okay. So just finishing off the Ramah. Very interesting. So what about kamiyah for an animal? Can an animal wear an amulet? So says the Ramah, if it's mumcha, if it's tried and tested for an animal, then it's okay. But not if it's not tried and tested. Even though it may be tried and tested for a human, it's not good enough for an animal. It's got to be tried and tested for the animal. Says the Mishnah Berurah Samach, because a person, a human being, has mazel, or malach hamelitz olav, and an angel is looking over a person, milmala, from on high, and therefore the muzzle will help the person who's wearing this kamiyah, that the kamiyah will be effective. As opposed to a behema. So just finishing off on footnote 20, interesting point. If a human goes out with a kamiyah which is not tried and tested, it's not a deraisa, it's only a drabonon, because people do wear these things. Therefore, you're going down a peg, and therefore for an animal it should be mutalachatchila to wear a kamiyah she'eina mumcha. Nevertheless, a human being who believes in the effectiveness of an amulet, then for him it will be considered an item of clothing. An animal hasn't got any das, it doesn't want the kamir. Therefore, if the kamir is not tried and tested, it will be no good for this thing. Okay, Beseda.
You have kamir for an animal.
Animals need good luck. Yeah, no, it needs good luck as well, that it shouldn't be attacked, or I don't know. It needs protection, or I don't know, I suppose, something like that. Okay.